never imagined my quiet afternoon would take such an unexpected turn. I had just left the gym, still sweaty, rushing to catch the elevator in the building. It was past 6 in the evening, the time when people were heading home, and the elevator was almost full. Suddenly, someone appeared running towards the doors, and instinctively, I held it open for him. That was the first time I saw him. He was tall, much taller than me. His dark skin gleamed under the fluorescent lights of the elevator, and his green eyes stood out like two emeralds. His physique was impressive. Broad shoulders, a defined chest, muscular arms. He looked like he had just left the gym, too, wearing a tight t-shirt that highlighted every curve of his muscles. The moment our eyes met, I felt something inside me that I couldn't explain. "Thanks, man," he said, his deep voice reverberating through the small space. "No problem," I replied, trying to keep my cool. The elevator was hot, stuffy, and I could smell the faint scent of cologne mixed with sweat. The air between us felt dense, and I didn't know if it was because of the heat or something else. Suddenly, with an unexpected jolt, the elevator stopped. The lights flickered, and we were thrown slightly to the sides from the impact. "Oh no." "Not now," I muttered, feeling the nervousness rise inside me. He looked at me with a reassuring smile. "Relax. It's probably just a technical issue. Someone will fix it soon." I wanted to believe him, but as time passed, the nervousness only grew. We tried pressing the buttons, but nothing happened. The soft voice of the building receptionist echoed through the intercom, informing us that they were working on the problem, but it might take a while. Great, I thought to myself. "What do you think we can do to pass the time?" he asked, half joking, but with a glint in his eyes that sent a chill down my spine. I turned to him and realized just how small the elevator seemed with the two of us inside. He was massive, and his arms, crossed over his chest, revealed his muscles. My heart raced faster, and suddenly, the air seemed harder to breathe. "Are you all right?" he asked, noticing my unease. "Yeah, I just don't like tight spaces," I responded, but I knew there was more to it. Then something unexpected happened. He took a step closer, and the space between us practically vanished. The heat from his body radiated, and I couldn't help but stare into those bright green eyes. My heart pounded, and before I could think, he smiled. A mischievous smile, almost as if he knew exactly what was happening to me. My hands began to sweat. I didn't know if it was from the growing heat in the elevator or the presence of him so close to me. I could smell him, a mix of masculine cologne and sweat that made me more nervous than I cared to admit. The elevator remained stuck, and time seemed to drag on. There was no more sound on the intercom, only the suffocating silence between the two of us. He stepped even closer, and our bodies were almost touching. The space seemed to shrink with every second. My back was already against the wall of the elevator, and he leaned his head in to observe me more closely, his green eyes sparkling with curiosity and something else. An electric tension hung in the air. I didn't know what to do, or if I should do anything. His closeness was making it hard to breathe. "You're trembling," he observed, and there was a playful tone to his voice. But there was more, something I couldn't quite identify. I tried to respond, but my mouth was dry. All I managed was a nervous smile and a slight nod. Then he extended his hand and gently placed it on my shoulder. His touch made my skin tingle. It wasn't aggressive, but the strength and control in his grip were evident. His broad fingers squeezed lightly, and the warmth of his hand spread through my body. "Don't be nervous," he said, his voice low and reassuring, but with a hint of provocation. But I was nervous, and at the same time, a latent curiosity grew inside me. My eyes couldn't stop exploring every detail of his body, and that's when I realized he was staring at me in the same way. I could feel his gaze traveling over me, as if he were studying, evaluating. It was something I wasn't used to feeling, but it wasn't bad. Quite the opposite. With a deep sigh, he placed his other hand on the wall next to my head, trapping me even more. Now, our personal space had completely disappeared, and I could feel the heat of his body just inches from mine. His breathing was steady, but I could detect a slight tremor, as if he, too, was struggling with something inside. "I've always found tight spaces interesting," he murmured, leaning closer. "It makes people get to know each other better." My heart raced. That phrase echoed in my mind, and before I could think too much, he slid his hand from my shoulder to my chest. His touch was gentle at first, but gradually grew more confident, exploring every detail of my lean, athletic body. I was speechless, unable to react, and at the same time, a wave of desire washed over me like I had never felt before. I looked at him, unsure of what to do or say. He seemed to sense my internal conflict, and suddenly, with a firm but controlled movement, he pressed his lips close to my ear and whispered, "Do you want me to stop?" The warmth of his breath sent a shiver down my spine, and all I could do was shake my head, my eyes locked on his, full of desire. I was lost in that moment, not knowing where this was going, but knowing I didn't want to go back. His touch didn't stop, and every second seemed to stretch on forever. His hand slid over my chest with a firmness that left me breathless. With every movement, I wondered where this would lead, and at the same time, I knew I didn't want him to stop. "Are you all right?" he asked again, but it didn't feel like a question. There was a tone of certainty in his voice, as if he already knew the answer. I could barely speak. My hands were pressed against the wall, my entire body trapped under his presence. His hand slid over my abdomen, feeling my tense muscles. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was echoing in the silence of the elevator. That's when I felt his lips gently brush against my neck. It was a soft, almost hesitant touch, but the wave of heat it sent through me was intense. I instinctively tilted my head, allowing him more space to explore. The desire was palpable, and I couldn't control my thoughts any longer. He smiled against my skin, as if he knew exactly the effect he was having on me. His lips continued their exploration, and my hands finally found the courage to move. I touched his arm, feeling the rigid muscles under his warm skin. It was as if I had given myself permission to participate in this moment, and everything seemed to intensify. With a quick and decisive motion, he pulled back just enough to look into my eyes. The connection between us was undeniable. I saw something in his eyes, something deeper than just desire. There was curiosity, intensity, as if he was fighting to control himself, but at the same time aware that the line between control and surrender was fading. "You've never done this before, have you?" he asked, his voice low and rough. I shook my head. It was true, I had never been in a situation like this, so intense, so raw. But there was something in the way he looked at me, the way he touched my body, that made me trust him, even though I didn't fully understand why. "Relax," he whispered. "I'll take care of you." With those words, a wave of warmth spread through my body. He slid his hand down my back, and before I could react, his lips were on mine. The kiss was gentle at first, but quickly became more intense. I kissed him back with everything I had, my hands gripping his shoulders as our bodies pressed even closer together. The heat between us was almost suffocating, but I didn't want to stop. There was an urgency in our movements, as if time was running out, even though we knew we were stuck there for hours. His lips, his hands, every touch seemed to ignite something inside me I didn't know existed. I felt lost, and at the same time, completely found in that moment. Every touch, every breath was a step towards something we could no longer control. The heat in the elevator was unbearable now, but it wasn't the environment that was suffocating me. It was the weight of the growing desire, the intensity of being so close to him, of feeling every inch of his body against mine. I had never imagined that being trapped in such a small space could awaken something so big inside of me. Reality was blending with what I thought was impossible, and I no longer knew where the line of reason ended and the line of surrender began. His hands roamed my body like they knew exactly where to touch, as if he already knew me completely. Every move, every touch seemed to draw a path on my body that I didn't know existed. His lips were on mine again, fiercer, more intense, and I gave myself completely. There was no more hesitation. My hands, once timid, now explored his body with urgency, feeling the firmness of his muscles, sensing the strength he carried in every part of himself. I was engulfed in a sensation of total loss of control, but there was no fear, only desire. And the way he responded to me, how his touches became more insistent, made it clear that he felt the same. "Uh-oh, you're driving me crazy," he murmured against my skin, his lips sliding down my neck as he pressed me even harder against the wall of the elevator. I wanted to respond, but words seemed useless. All I could do was feel. My breathing was heavy, labored, and my body seemed to react on its own, craving more and more of him. There was no turning back. I knew that, and he knew it too. With a firm but gentle movement, he turned me around, my back now against his chest. His hand slid down my abdomen as he held me tightly, as if he wanted to make sure I wouldn't escape. Not that I wanted to. The heat of his body against mine was overwhelming, and I leaned back, surrendering completely to the sensation of being enveloped by him. "Do you trust me?" he asked, his voice low, almost husky, and his warm breath tickled my ear. I just nodded, unable to form a coherent response. And in that moment, I knew something big was coming. Something I couldn't stop, even if I wanted to. Every second in the elevator seemed to drag on, but at the same time, the heat between us made the atmosphere thick, as if the air itself was saturated with tension. Feeling his body so close to mine was a mixture of excitement and vulnerability. I had never felt so exposed, so at someone else's mercy, and at the same time, I had never felt so eager to give in. He pulled me closer, and this time the touch was softer, almost as if he were holding something precious. The contrast between the strength of his muscular arms and the gentleness with which he held me made me feel a mixture of safety and desire. I could feel his heavy breathing against my neck, and the sound was a constant reminder of what we were doing. Something intense, something forbidden, but absolutely inevitable. "I knew I wouldn't be able to resist," he murmured, with a smile that I could feel in his tone. I wanted to respond, but the words simply wouldn't come. All I could do was return his touches, his caresses. There was something in his eyes, something that made me trust him completely. It was a connection I had never felt before, and it scared me as much as it attracted me. "Are you okay?" he asked again. But this time, there was a depth to his voice that made me realize he was genuinely concerned. I nodded, taking a deep breath. "Yeah," I finally managed to say. "I'm okay." He smiled, and it was in that moment that I noticed something different. The look in his eyes wasn't just desire. There was something more, a shadow of doubt, or maybe a secret he was hiding. It wasn't the time to ask, but the thought lingered in the back of my mind. Suddenly, the silence in the elevator was interrupted by the low hum of machinery. We both looked up, confused. The lights flickered, and the sound of static on the intercom filled the small space. "Hello?" A metallic voice echoed through the speaker. "We're working on fixing the problem. Are you both still okay in there?" I froze. Reality came crashing back, and the urgency of everything we were doing started to feel more real than ever. We were trapped in an elevator, and soon, someone would come to get us out of there. I looked at him, and for the first time since it all started, I saw the same realization in his eyes. "We're fine," he responded calmly, pressing the intercom button. But what was clear to me was that something else was about to happen. Something that would change everything between us. And this time, I wasn't sure if I was ready. The elevator lights flickered more frequently now, signaling that the problem was being resolved. The mechanical noises outside indicated that soon the doors would open. The time we had spent together in that tight space felt like an eternity, but reality was about to crash in again. The thought that our moment was ending brought a mix of relief and anxiety. I stepped back a little, trying to process everything that had just happened. My eyes met his, and it was in that moment I realized he was thinking the same thing. The air between us was still charged with tension, but now there was something else. The awareness that once those doors opened, what we had shared would become just a memory, an intense memory, but still confined to that elevator. "Are you okay?" he asked again, but this time the question felt heavier, more significant. I nodded, but I wasn't sure if I was really okay. My mind was a mess, mixing desire, confusion, and the realization that soon everything would go back to normal. But what was normal after something like this? I didn't know what to think. He took a step toward me, his hand gripping my arm firmly but reassuringly. "This doesn't have to end here, you know." My hands were shaking and my heart was racing. His words hit me like a wave of relief, but also left me even more confused. Something inside me wanted to believe that outside of that elevator, we could continue from where we left off, but at the same time, I knew that outside of that enclosed space, the real world awaited us. "You mean," I started, unsure of how to finish the sentence. He looked at me with those intense green eyes and smiled. "We can keep this going, outside, if you want." I didn't know what to say. Everything felt so unreal, so intense, and at the same time, so fragile. We were trapped in what felt like a fever dream, and reality was about to hit us hard. Suddenly, the elevator jolted, and the lights fully turned on. The sound of grinding gears grew louder, and I knew the moment was ending. The doors started to open slowly, and the noise of life outside flooded the small space. The tension in the elevator dissipated, replaced by the sound of voices and the chaos of the outside world. I looked at him one more time, and I saw something different in his eyes, a mix of hope and fear. Maybe he was thinking the same thing I was, if what we had in there could survive out here. But before I could say anything, he smiled again, squeezing my arm firmly. "Find me outside," he said, and with those words he disappeared as the doors finally opened. I stood there for a moment, trying to understand what it all meant. The people around didn't even notice what had happened in there. To them, we were just two strangers walking out of an elevator. But to me, there was something more. Something I still needed to figure out. I walked out of the elevator with shaky legs, my heart still racing. I looked around, trying to spot him among the crowd of people who barely noticed what had happened. The noise, the bright lights, and the confusion of everyday life outside started to fill the void the elevator had left behind. Reality was back, and the moment we shared seemed to fade as I moved further away. But I knew I couldn't just let this pass. He had told me to find him outside, and something inside me longed for that. I passed the reception desk, feeling the weight of the receptionist's gaze, completely oblivious to what had really happened. I walked towards the exit of the building, and that's when I saw him. He was leaning against a black motorcycle, his arms crossed, and that same intense look in his eyes that had captivated me in the elevator. Our eyes met, and for a moment, the noise of the city disappeared. It was like the world around us didn't matter, just the two of us. I walked up to him, my heart still in my throat, unsure of what would happen next. He watched me with a mischievous smile on his lips, and I realized that he was just as confused as I was. The difference was that he seemed to accept it with an ease that left me unsettled. "You came," he said, almost as if testing my reaction. "Of course I came," I responded, trying to hide the nervousness. "You asked me to find you." He smiled again, that playful smile that had drawn me in from the first moment. "I wasn't just talking about us now, you know? I meant about us." His words hit me like a punch. Us? What did that even mean? I didn't know what to think, and for a brief moment, I considered the possibility that it had just been a moment, something that happened in the heat of the situation. But at the same time, I knew it was more than that. He took a step forward, closing the distance between us. He took a step forward, closing the distance between us again, but this time, his touch was lighter, more subtle. I know it was intense. "In there," he said, looking directly into my eyes. "But it doesn't have to end like this. We can see where this goes if you want." My hands were shaking, my heart pounding, and I looked at him. His words made sense, but a part of me was still uncertain. It was all so new, so fast. But looking at him now, I knew I couldn't just let this go. "I want to," I finally said, my voice steadier than I expected. His smile widened, and he reached out his hand to me. "Then let's figure it out together." I took his hand, and in that moment, I knew my life was about to change in ways I had never imagined. The elevator, that claustrophobic and tense space, had brought us closer in a way that the world outside could never undo. As he led me away from the building's entrance, feeling the wind on my face, I realized the connection between us hadn't just been a momentary impulse. It was something real, something worth exploring beyond the walls of that elevator. And for the first time in a long time, I felt that the unexpected could be the start of something incredible. We stepped out of the building, the cool night air hitting us as we walked side by side. I glanced at him, feeling a mix of excitement and uncertainty. He stopped, turning to face me, his eyes soft but curious. "So, what now?" he asked, his voice low. I shrugged, smiling. "I guess we find out." He grinned, reaching out to touch my arm. "I'm glad we got stuck in that elevator." "Me too," I replied. And with that, we walked into the night, leaving the uncertainty behind.